Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. That's my sofa, that's Roscoe, I'm Paul, and today on the Sofa Squad we're going to be talking about a little bit more of a serious subject. This is a case that is unfolding right now out in the Ozarks, and here's the thing about this case. We don't know all the details yet. The details we do know so far are horrifying. But they also, in my opinion, this is not fact yet, it's still unfolding like I said, but they also speak to something larger than what we see going on beneath the surface in this area, probably in our nation. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Cassidy Rainwater. Now before I begin, I always like to say thank you to everybody here at the Sofa Squad for making this channel possible. I couldn't do it without you. I greatly appreciate it. Now also, there are resources with links and whatnot down in the description for people who might be in need of getting out of a situation they could be in, or possibly you might know information about cold cases. Check the description for those things. They're all down there. Also, if you are into movie reviews, scary movies particularly, don't forget to check out my other channel. I'll put a little clip up here. It's called A Slice, A Spice, and a Dice Movie Reviews. It's new, it's free, check it out. And also, if you want to see more stuff by me, some talking about cases that might be a little too much to talk about here, also absurd Florida man cases, me doing story times, all that kind of stuff, consider joining Patreon or a channel membership. Again, thank you to everyone who makes the channel possible, who keeps the victims' memories and cases going so that hopefully them and their families can get justice one day. Now Cassidy is only 33 years old. She went missing last July, so not that long ago. Now toward the end of August, family members would file a missing persons report, and this is where things really started to kick off in the search for Cassidy. Now, as I said before, she is still unfortunately missing at the time of this recording, but as you look into this case and start peeling the layers back, it just gets more bizarre and more unsettling.
We're keeping a close eye on a missing persons case in Dallas County, Missouri. 33-year-old Cassidy Rainwater is missing.
Now, there are two men that are currently being held, they're incarcerated in regards to what has potentially happened to her and her disappearance. Now, these men's name is James Phelps and Timothy Norton. So now once this missing persons case took off and police started investigating, it was alleged that James Phelps was the last person she was seen with. And so on September 1st, investigators went out to this property where they're at, and we're going to talk about the property here in a minute, but they went out there to interview James and find out, what's up. Now, when they were out there interviewing him, first of all, this is like out in the middle of nowhere, it sounds like. And it's a small little house, like 800 square feet. So they were there, they're talking to him. And basically he was like, yeah, you know what? I know Cassidy. Yes, she was staying here. He didn't deny that. Now, what he did say is that he was helping her to get back on her feet, that type situation. And he was like, yeah, she talked about, leaving and starting life over and this and that. And then he would also say, you know what, like a month ago, she went and met someone at the end of the driveway. She got in a car, and you know what? I've never seen her again. Now, another thing that was odd at the time of this, interview, all that kind of stuff, is that, remember, he said that she had been staying there and basically just disappeared. She just left, up and left. And so when the investigators looked in this loft area that she was supposedly in, it was like cleaned out. There's like no sign that she had ever been there. So none of her stuff, nothing like that. The whole thing was like cleaned out. So clearly that's very red flag-ish. Now things got even worse. So fast forward just a little bit of time, like mid-September, an anonymous source would send the FBI a photograph. Now in this photograph, it's literally what nightmares are made out of. It would show Cassidy. She didn't have all of her clothes on, and she was in a cage, like in a dog cage. So you can only imagine that this was, not good, and the FBI began to look into this deeper. Now, it has been alleged that he had posted, and he, by them, I mean James, and we'll get into Timothy in a minute, but these images and whatnot to the dark web, and it was turned in, but I don't know that 100% for fact, but essentially, anonymous source turned this in to the FBI. They go back to investigate. Now, when they do go back to this house, they are armed with a search warrant. Okay, so they're going to look around, they're going to do this. Well, they get his phone, and they look in the phone, and he has way more pictures of Cassidy in, you know, this state of entrapment. So now this is where Timothy Norton kind of comes into play. So he had communicated with James Phelps, so there's like evidence of this on the phones and whatnot. Regardless, police want to talk to Timothy to find out, you know, how involved in this situation is he. Now, at first he would be like, oh, I'm a truck driver. I live off the truck or in the truck when I'm not on the road. So, you know, I'm just not really even associated. So that questioning took place on September 19th. Now, after they did that line of questioning, they were just like, yeah, something's not seeming right here. So they would go back the next day and talk to him again, September 20th. When they went back again, that's when they started really being able to say, yeah, this is all wrong. Now, during the second interview, Timothy would confess, and he would say, yeah, you know what, James called me over to the house to help with the situation with this girl. I helped hold her down. I helped to confine her. You know, if they got to that point of just saying that, like, most likely that was his, like, I barely helped type situation. If he's willing to admit to that part, which is horrible enough, God only knows what he really did to this poor woman, okay? So we know he probably did more than that. That's allegedly, that's speculation. That's just me going on I've watched a whole bunch of this unfold before in these cases, and I don't believe him. So now, all that being said, let's take a minute and talk about this house and this property, because this is a whole other level of bizarre to this case. The address of the property is 386 Moon Valley Road. It's a 3-acre property in Lebanon, about 160 miles southeast of Kansas City. Now, the house records show that it's been owned by a Missouri man since 2009. And again, like I've said before, this is in the Ozarks. This is in a heavily wooded area. So this has that kind of off in the cut feel. Now, the structure that was on there was built in 1996. It was like 800 square feet. So it was a kind of small little cabin out in the woods. Now, here's another thing that I think is really weird about this. So the court documents would show that back in 2011, James Phelps would list this property as like his residence or whatever. But also Timothy would do the same back in the 90s. So this is one of the things where I'm like, okay, that's sus. Number one, Timothy's trying to be like, oh no, I just drive a truck. I don't have nothing to do with this. But they're both listing this place as their residence like off and on throughout the year. So I'm just like, okay. So then it makes you wonder, what is this house used for? You know what I'm saying? Because the 90s were a long time ago. So that part is very weird to me, but it gets even weirder. Now, when this case first took off and like police were checking the scene out, doing all that, obviously the house, the property were all under tight security. So, you know, the police custody, that kind of thing while they were searching and whatnot. Now, once they kind of did what they were going to do, obviously they turned it back over to the owner. And on October 4th, the house, the structure would burn to the ground.
And a fire broke out last week. The house burned to the ground. Speculation is there was a tripwire, and that's why the bomb squad was called in.
Now, not only that, but the fire department and whatnot is going to end up listing, or they have listed it as a second-degree arson. They found, and I cannot say this word, y'all, so bear with me, incendiary devices. This is very intentional, okay? So this is my question about that. Okay, so these dudes are in jail, all that kind of stuff. Who burned the house down? Who's hiding what? How deep does this go? Because I feel like this situation and these two guys are like the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole bunch of stuff beneath the surface of the water. Now, there's another thing going on with this case that I was kind of like, what? And that is the sheriff. So obviously there's a huge investigation going. This is ongoing. They have been very like to the book, keeping information, you know, tight-lipped. And there's been rumors and this and that and all sorts of crazy stuff coming out, and nobody knows what's what and yada yada. So the sheriff would post a post on Facebook that I had to read it twice, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh my goodness. It literally is like the sheriff was just expressing their thoughts with no filter. Now, I can appreciate the frustration. Now, I'm going to put a link to it down below. I'm going to put it also up here in the screen for you or whatever. But I'm also just going to read a couple of the little, we'll call them zingers. There's a lot of misinformation and rumors regarding the Cassidy Rainwater case being circulated across social media and various news platforms. While I understand the impatience and curiosity of people, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. It's not a good idea to listen to a crime reporter blogger or TikTok videos that is sitting in their apartment or their mommy and daddy's basement eating great value cheese puffs and drinking box wine with grand intentions of being a social media superstar. I, for one, feel seen, misunderstood, and attacked. Now I'm also in this, like, first of all, if this sheriff does not have a part-time job as like a comedy writer, I'm like, did we have to go there on the great value cheesy puffs? I'm sorry, I like those. Now, like I said, this post does go on, and it goes into much more detail and reading. And again, the link's down in the description below. But basically, they're just like, look, there's a bunch of rumors going on out there right now. This isn't a TV show. Things don't happen overnight. We have to preserve the case and whatnot. And I mean, I totally get it. It's just the first time that I've read someone speaking this freely, and I was here for the reading. Now, the sheriff did also say to expect more charges to come. Now, I also looked at a couple of interviews, and one of them was with the biological father of one of Cassidy's children, their teenager. And I thought that there was some interesting information that came from this interview. Now, the father did say, you know what, yeah, Cassidy was kind of in a bad place in life at the time that this happened. And he even said that, you know, he thought that she might have been homeless during this time. And that does make me wonder if that vulnerability is what these monsters exploited and took advantage of, if that makes sense. Regardless, he said, you know what, I was trying to get her to, you know, even come to my city, get back on her feet. Pretty much the stuff that these monsters were talking about, it's almost like they took a story that she really was trying to do, but she got stopped along the way by them, if that makes sense. Anyways, now also another sad and strange component to this case, although they are not directly related, is that Cassidy's own mother went missing years before.
Cassidy Rainwater's own mother went missing back in 2007. Her remains were eventually found scattered in a field by a farmer, according to the Associated Press.
Now, her mother went missing back in 2007, and eventually her remains were found. They were scattered in a field in this Lebanon County. So, again, now remember, Lebanon County, this is where this house was, where Cassidy was being held. Look at the timeline. 2007, so this Timothy guy is claiming the house that burned down as a residence back in the 90s. 2011, James is claiming it. To me, what this case speaks of, and this is allegedly street, this is speculation street, it seems like this, again, is the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot more going on. It seems like somebody outside of the obvious two people in jail wanted to cover up evidence and make stuff disappear, so hence the house burning down. It just seems like this could be a ring of some sorts, if you know what I'm saying, and that they might have uncovered that. Now, there's no COD ever announced on the mother's case. No one's ever been arrested, and it's still open. Now, James Phelps and Timothy Norton are going to be back in court on November 5th. They are both being held on heinous charges, y'all. Okay, bad ones, okay, as they should be. More on the way, okay, 100%. And again, down below in the description box is information if you, number one, think you know or know information about this case that could lead to the location of Cassidy to bring her home to her loved ones. By all means, call, reach out to them. And again, don't forget about those other resource links down below if you or someone you know is in need of those. Hopefully Cassidy will be found, she'll come back home and start the healing process, and hopefully if there is more to uncover, maybe this has happened and it won't be for naught. Something will come of it and other people can be saved along the way, because it just seems like there's something way deeper going on than just this one case. I do not think it's isolated. Thank you for watching. As usual, I really appreciate each and every one of you Sofa Squad members, and until next time, I'll see you then.